Chapter 18. Sir, there's an inbound ship from Kudurru, said a soldier standing behind a large monitor. The Kudurru Spaceport hadn't been used for interstellar travel in over 5 years. This tower had accumulated a lot of dust, but for now it was up and running. Send a security team to search it, and put the passengers in holding for now. We will just do a light vetting to ensure it's not some Federation trick, answered the commanding officer. Yes, sir. A security team met the ship as it docked and escorted the passengers through a check-in procedure while a rover boarded and searched the ship. Stand still, please, said an officer, holding a lighted wand. He tapped the burly man on the forearm with the wand and read the monitor. Garej Razindi, citizen, Tier 2, militia leader for Ground Forces Intercept Team, Faradun. Faradun? You are going to have to explain. Prey fumbled with his hands, wondering where to start. I was in hiding on Faradun, in the Elkanese caves. Maybe you've heard of them. There was one of them Gunthian gates there, and a fellow refugee knew how to operate them. The gate took us to Kudurru, and from there, we found a ship to take us back here. Just found a ship? The soldier looked at the fellow Sirak skeptically. There will most likely be further questioning. Wait over there. Prey took a seat nearby. Next, called the soldier. Rue stepped up confidently as the wand scanned her. No data, said the soldier, looking towards Prey. She was too young when the attack hit. Hadn't reached the age of registration yet, he explained. Sit over there as well, please. Rue went and sat next to Prey. Observer? Inquired the soldier, not really wondering about the man's occupation, but rather surprised at his appearance on the planet. That's right, Observer Mavis, at your service. We'll see about that, he said, scanning. Peter Mavis, observer for 10 years. Last known assignment, Kudurru. So you still have access to the central records? Asked Mavis. Some things cannot be sieged. Please sit over there with the other passengers. Next. What the hell is this thing? He jabbed the Larrywalk with the wand. No organic material. Please scan again. The soldier looked at the tall, furry beast, then put a hand on his chest and ripped the costume off. All 6 of the security personnel in the room immediately flinched, and most looked posed to run. The inspector dropped the fur costume and took a few steps back, fear in his eyes. One of the men dropped his weapon and ran. Halt, commanded Trillin. The man stopped in his tracks, shaking. Trillin took the wand and zapped himself with it, then turned to the monitor. 000027, Relg, Stalking Division. Origins, Sicker. Instituted 72 years, 6.1 months ago. Current status, missing in action. No signal from tracker. The Relg looked back towards the soldier. Interesting, he paused. I am looking for a Drazian. You haven't happened to see one, have you? Now things were starting to make a little more sense. A stalker looking for a Drazian, that's standard business. The soldier nodded his head. Where is he? The Relg demanded. I don't know. Truly, I have no idea, the inspector whimpered. The Relg gazed at him for a second, then smiled. At least, it seemed like he smiled. No worries, he said, placing a hand on the ground for a few seconds. I've found him. You are going to have to set your weapons over here for the time being, said a finely dressed man, adorned in gold chains and jewelry. Oh, yeah? Why's that? Demanded Kvar. He had been kept in this room for days. Sure, he had everything he wanted, as long as that wasn't freedom. It was for his own safety, they had explained. You are going to have a very important visitor, You should feel honored, for the Factor has decided to grace you with his presence, the man said, frisking Kvar. He looked at the Drazian's gold ankh hanging from his neck, but decided it did not pose a threat. The Factor, said Kvar, surprised. I didn't think he made appearances. I thought he was just a myth, to be honest. The man laughed and looked Kvar over. This kid had somehow managed to do the unthinkable and destroy a Federation nexus, ending the siege's death grip on the Sirak race. One boy. He couldn't believe it. A week ago, only the most optimistic would have thought the Sirak could last another 5 years. Today, talks were taking place about where the Sirak war fleet should be sent. Attack direct Federation targets, or try and secure further allies and influence around other galaxies. What a turnaround. Already commercial traffic had resumed, and life was returning to the pre-war status. And this fucker had done it all, and mostly by accident. He is not a myth. Now, there are a few things I must inform you of. The Factor desires to meet with you alone, but you should know that there will be hundreds of elite Sirak troops stationed outside, so don't even think of trying anything funny. Secondly, you must bow when the Factor enters and show him the utmost respect. As you should be aware, the Factor is the most important religious figure in the Sirak systems. He unified our race and saved us from falling to the Federation. It would be wise not to question his actions. Is this understood? Kvar smiled and looked at the man. Of course. Good. The man looked at his watch and walked towards the door. Now, it is my greatest pleasure to introduce to you the supreme leader of all Sirak, the Factor. He pulled the door open, and behind it stood a tall, thin and pale man. His face was wrinkled and looked as if it had aged much sooner than it should have. Only a small amount of wispy hair remained on his shiny head. Not exactly what the Drazian had pictured, but not at all that surprised either. Kvar took a knee with a sneaking smile. Your Highness, you can cut the bullshit. Leave us, Splinter, the Factor replied. The man holding the door looked taken aback, but left as soon as he regained composure. The Factor closed the door behind him with a solid thud. The two stared at each other for a few long, silent seconds. Finally, Kvar broke the silence. Using religion to unify and control your race. Nice. I like it. Pretty standard move. Has the advantages of devoted followers and a stable rule. The disadvantage, of course, is a closed mindset, poor ability to adapt, and in general will lead to a slow decline of your race. Plus, there's always a risk that some interpretations change and, like that, you're out. The Factor looked at him for a few more seconds, then smiled. My race is a rather violent one, with all its traditions and history of intergalactic war. I weighed the odds for a long time, but decided that religion would be the key for my race's survival. It was a good call, in my opinion, as we have survived through some questionable times. Indeed, agreed Kvar. So why have you imprisoned me here under this house arrest? The scrawny leader looked around the room and picked up Kvar's boomerang, resting on a table in the corner. The High Council views you as a threat to our kingdom. They fear if word of your exploits get out, the people might rally behind you, depose of me and my regime. Your council? Kvar was skeptical. Isn't that typically the role of the all-powerful, feared dictator to lose his own power? No, Kvar. It is Kvar, correct? That is what I've been told. The Factor paused and thought for a few moments. It is generally known throughout the universe, or at least I have been told, that I am ranked the most powerful leader throughout. Can you believe that? Me, this shrimpy, pale, balding old man. Meh. Physical forms mean nothing. All Tier 1s know that. replied Kvar. Ah, but alas, there are not very many Tier 1s left. Kvar smiled. I doubt you are the most powerful person in the universe. The Factor spun towards Kvar. Leader. Most powerful leader. Indeed, there are many, many people ahead of me in singular, raw power. Yourself included, no doubt. Kvar shrugged it off with a smile. So why do you care what your council thinks? Or perhaps you secretly fear losing your throne. I don't fear losing my throne, Kvar. I've never much enjoyed it. I would much rather be on my home planet, Sirac 8, in the high-up crags of the Isla Dori, surrounded by the heavy forest and running water. The fresh air blowing through the trees and sneaking its way through cracks in my hand-built high hut, which would sit just above the tree line, providing views unparalleled. I would sit in the tiny cupola on top with a small fireplace, and I would— The Factor looked up from his daze. That is what I could have had, Kvar. A stress-free, easy, satisfying, and happy life. But you know how it goes. Fate's call, said Kvar, his face sympathetic. The Factor smiled. It goes by many names, but the gist is the same. If you have the knowledge, if you are a true human, you are obligated to fulfill your role, or be doomed to live your life in a prison, a living contradiction. You could have never been happy. I sometimes think our kind can only be content, replied Kvar. The Factor thought about this for a moment. In truth, I think that our kind has no true choice. I don't think any of us, past, present, or future, have chosen the other path. Those who do were never one of us. They never had the vision, never were able to see. Fate's call, he smiled, thinking about the term. Kvar and the Factor stood silently for a few moments, reflecting. The Factor inspected the Krishish wrench, then set it down. He moved over toward the relic staff lying on the table and looked at it curiously. And you see, Kvar, that's why I don't fear you. I don't think you are here to overthrow me. Not while the Federation is out there. The prawns are out there. Undiscovered planets and galaxies are out there. Messing around in Sirac is just a waste of time. Now, if only my idiot council could understand that. So I am to leave? Asked Kvar. Afraid so, replied the Factor. I can offer you a ship. Why do I feel like there's a catch? Of course, we need your silence, the Factor smiled, on your actual role in destroying the Nexus and freeing Sirac. I should think 6 million federal credits should suffice. 6 mil, huh? That's a pretty large sum. Almost too large a sum. I might just acquire more targets on my back, replied Kvar. Have no worries. I'll hold my people off, laughed the Factor. After all, we have a common enemy. I will write the funds off as a strategic investment. But where am I to go? I've never been in Federated territory, and all my life, the only place I ever felt calling me was Sirac. Can't a guy get a moment's rest? That I do not know. However, I can advise you to stay away from the archives. My spies have informed me that there has been a great schism. The archives are no longer a neutral force. Kvar laughed. Tell me about it, he said sarcastically, wondering whatever happened to that skunk Phalaris. There was a loud muffled sound from behind the door that seemed to grow louder and louder, until finally the door burst open, and the Factor's bodyguard stumbled in and crumpled to the ground. A relic stalker stood in the doorway. His new, decorative armor had disintegrated in the preceding battle, revealing the lightning pattern that expanded outwards from his chest. Behind him, the plaza was filled with bodies, some piled on top of each other, others crawling away. The boomerang was wrenched out of the Factor's hand by an invisible force and flew to Kvar. You. Don't you fucking things ever die? The Relg looked towards the Factor and began walking towards him. A Relg? How did they get here so fast? Brilliant play. Fucking brilliant, said the Factor, who backed away from the Relg. It veered away from him, approached the table, and picked up a small but very thick red cylinder. Now the Relg looked like a true stalker, hunter's staff in hand. Any ideas, Drazian? Asked the Factor, who had slid over by Kvar now. I fought this guy before. Thought I killed it. Those black marks there. That was me, said Kvar, with a hint of pride. How about a repeat performance? I used a Krisha wrench before. It's over there on the table. Good luck getting to it. The Relg looked at the Drazian for a second, as if listening to him, then turned back towards the table and searched through the weapons. He found the cloth bundle that hid the Krisha wrench and undid it. The giant red beast, or perhaps machine, inspected the weapon and playfully fitted into the small hole in his breastplate. It was a perfect fit. The Relg turned back to the Drazian and approached him. Can we fight it? Asked the Factor. What's the point? This thing is unkillable. Do you see any paths of fate beckoning to you? No. Do you? No. The Relg now stood toe-to-toe with the Drazian. While the stalker normally towered over its surrounding populations, and certainly over the Factor, the Drazian, however, was at near equal height, and did not have to look up quite so high. The red beast raised the Krisha wrench and pressed it lightly into Kvar's chest. A drop of sweat dripped off the Drazian's face. You, demanded the Relg. There was a gulp. You fought me. You beat me. You are Drazian, said the Relg, the sound filtering out of its mask in a manner unseen to the watchers. Kvar took a deep breath. Yeah, that's right. And then you took my staff. My staff. Kvar nodded slowly. Do you think that you can fight Relg? That you can take on my superior kind? I did, until you came back to life and walked through that door. The Relg straightened, looked at the ceiling for a moment, then back to the Drazian. Good. I am exception. You have freed me. With this torch, the Relg said, gesturing to the Krisha wrench. Now you will fight Relg again. Kvar was beyond confused. I will? You want a rematch? The Relg stared at the white-haired boy for a bit. We will try and free my people from their enslavement, and I shall be their king. Does that sound fair? Fair? What the? Trillin, my God, Trillin, what have you done? The Relg turned towards the newcomers at the doorway. A large, Syriac man entered with a young, black-haired girl following closely behind. I have found my staff, said the Relg. If he could sound happy, this was it. I meant about all the dead people, growled Prey. They tried to fight me. I only wanted my staff. I fought only in self-defense. Sure, replied Prey, skeptical. Trillin, why did you leave us? Asked Ryu, running over to hug the war machine's leg. Kvar and the Factor stood perplexed. Behind the two newcomers, they could see some more of the Factor's men mobilizing in the background, trying to figure out how to deal with this unprecedented threat. Kvar wondered for a moment how the two had made it past them, and then moved on with more important thoughts, like what the hell was going on. What the hell's going on? Kvar asked aloud to anybody listening. I'm sorry. This Relg. His name is Trillin, started Prey. Yes, like the system. He was, "Holy shit, you're a Drazian. A living, breathing Drazian." The burly Sirak made his way past the Relg, who was patting the little girl's head. "It's nice to meet you. They call me Prey," he said. Then he turned towards the other man next to Kvar. "Who are you? His butler?" The Factor gave a thin smile, but before he could speak, Kvar interrupted. "What happened to this Relg? Why can he talk? What the hell is going on?" Prey filled the group in on what he knew and how they had got to where they were. "An uninhibited Relg. What are the odds?" exclaimed the Factor, pacing around a bit. A few of his bodyguards had dared to enter, and now stood uneasily near their leader, despite his attempts to unnerve them and explain that this was no normal Relg stalker. "The tides are indeed changing," he continued. "So you think I should go with him on this insane mission of his? I would be walking into hell. That's what it would be. But if you think about it, who really is left on the Trillin Mare system? What is there? No one has been there in a very long time. All of the Relg that are alive seem to be in service, on patrol, or in action at all times." The Factor raised an eyebrow towards Kvar. "At the very least, it would be an interesting adventure. A Drazian venturing into the shrouded lands of the Trillin Mare system. I can see it now. This would be a tale that people would tell of for ages." Kvar sighed and turned to the Relic. "Fine. I'll go with you, Trillin. Let's see what damage is left for us to do." The Relic bowed slightly and cast a glance at Prey and Bu. "And my companions, what should happen to them?" Prey stood in the corner, still not having moved after finding out the identity of the Factor. The Factor stepped forward. "I shall make sure they receive proper accommodations here on Sirak Main. They are, after all, my people. They will be taken care of. If they are not, I will come back and kill you," replied the Relg.